Morbidly Beautiful presents a horror interview podcast hosted by Brodie Hubbard. You have entered the chamber.
That opening theme was a song called "ITCHIN for the Blood" by Texas artist Lil Boodang, one of my favorites, and he was gracious enough to grant permission of use of that song for this new podcast on the Morbidly Beautiful network, The Chamber. I'm Brodie Hubbard. I am a writer who lives somewhere near the Superstition Mountains of Arizona. I host a video series called Video of the Damned, which is a horror review show and travelogue that is also now carried by Morbidly Beautiful. We have fun on that show, and while I hope that this podcast is entertaining, it's going to be of a different tempo. It's more of a literary discussion of the elements of horror. It's going to be looking at what makes creators tick and what makes the genre work. And so I'll be speaking with writers, directors, performers, all sorts, to figure out what draws us all to horror. For me, I remember being interested in slashers in the 80s as a kid, and then horror anthologies on television in the 90s, and kept up with it in the 21st century. And then my own writing started to steer more towards crime and the violent, but also those supernatural and stories where kind of the soul was the high stakes that the characters were grappling with. And that's just continued on in my viewing habits and reading habits. I am currently pivoting away from a career that I've had over the last several years, which was itself a pivot from the television industry. And one of the possible avenues I might land in is the funeral industry, the death care industry. And in talking to some folks from that, we have found some common threads as far as our interests and our ethics and what's important to us and dealing with our own mortality and being able to speak on those topics and being prepared to immerse oneself in dealing with that on a daily basis, just to put bread on the table. And I definitely see the parallels between that and being in horror. I know one is fictional, but you're still having to deal with mortality and the worst case scenarios that humanity and inhumanity can bring you. And so I'm really interested to find out in more conversations about what makes us so interested in what lies in the dark. And so today I'm talking to Seattle filmmaker, actress, musician, writer, Tonjia Atomic. She first appeared on my radar as one of the writers and the director of the sequel to Manos, Hands of Fate, very infamous movie from the 60s. The sequel is Manos Returns. And it does have some parody elements because those of you who know this kind of side of pop culture and outsider art know that movie. It's a Mystery Science Theater 3000 favorite. What Tonjia made with the cast, some of the original cast actually, and her other partners in the enterprise, actually has a lot of pathos. It has a lot of emotional stakes. I don't want to spoil it, of course. I've reviewed it on the Video of the Damned show, but there was a lot more put into it than might have needed to be, and ended up being really beautiful. And I'll talk to Tonjia about that, as well as some of her other projects and what draws her to the things that she likes. She's very much into kitsch and Americana, and one of the films of hers that I enjoyed was Plain Devil, very much a take on the juvenile delinquent film. And, you know, it brings up everything from John Waters, you know, the films of that ilk, to her storytelling and her directing. She really likes to take a page out of the book of John Sayles. So we'll examine as much as that as we can in a half-hour show. You can find her online on Instagram and Elon Musk's X, for however long that lasts, but what we all still call Twitter, at Tonjia Atomic, as well as her YouTube channel, where you can see a lot of her short works, and then some of those features are on, as of the publication of this podcast, on Tubi. Let's talk to Tonjia Atomic. Let's enter the chamber. It's really neat to finally talk to you, because we had touched base, I think it was last year, regarding the Manos sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And what I said at the time, and what I've said in the intro to this episode, is that, you know, that original work is very infamous in pop culture and outsider art. You know, it's an MST3K favorite. And while there are elements of parody and kind of callbacks to the first film, you and your team could have just done a straight up like for laughs, but there was actually a lot of pathos in it. There was a lot of like emotional stakes, and it touched me. It really, the ending actually, and other things, without spoiling it, you know, made me cry. Some of the fates of the characters, and I just was so pleasantly surprised at how beautiful it turned out to be. And I wanted to know sort of the process of what made you decide to go that route. Now, I said, seeing your other work, and some of it is very tongue-in-cheek, like Plain Devil, you know, is a really funny take on the delinquent film, a juvenile delinquent film, and some of your other projects, the Hungry Ghost, but this one you decided to go a little more emotional.
Yeah, that definitely, that was very intentional. We at first decided we were going to try to do a straight up comedy. I think that's one of the things we talked about, because we weren't sure how to go about pleasing the fans, and that was important to us. You know, we're not trying to like pander to anybody at all, but we did want to know our audience, and we understood that a lot of the audience had come to the first film through Mystery Science Theater, and a lot of those people are more comedy fans. So we thought, well, we should approach it more as a comedy then. But one of the things we never wanted to do was make the filmmaking look shoddy on purpose. We wanted to try our best with, you know, the limited budget that we had to make it look good, because I don't know, that just doesn't work for me most of the time. After, you know, seeing it done once, it kind of loses its charm for me. And we kind of were all on the same page. Like, that's not where we want the jokes to be, because the original film wasn't done like that on purpose at all. And we wanted to kind of also, I mean, we decided to get away from just doing pure comedy, because we realized that the first film had elements of seriousness in it, and you know, even Joel Hodgson said there's a sense of dread within it, and there is this like mystery to it, and that I think is why people also like the film, not just the Mystery Science Theater or Riff Tracks treatment, but because there is this mysterious element, and it kind of leaves you wondering what's more going on. And there were some things that leave you with a feeling of dread. And we thought, well, we want to take this seriously. And also, there's a number of fans out there that like the original film without the riffing as well. And so we didn't want to do a disservice to anyone.
Absolutely. There's a lot of the original and of the sequel that utilizes really gothic elements, the house, being key. What would you say is the type of horror that you were drawn to? I know Hammer Films was a really early influencer for you. I'm sure there's others. I know that there's a slasher project at one point that you were working on.
Still
And
working on it, but yeah.
very cool. I hope to hear some great updates about that we can talk about. But going kind of further back as a kid and sneaking down to see those Hammer films and other horror properties, what really drew you, and what did you find you were weaving into your writing?
Well, I think one of my early influences and something I've always been drawn to is the supernatural horror. I remember as a kid catching glimpses of like Poltergeist or The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, all on TV, and for one reason or another not being able to watch the whole thing, but getting glimpses, which was almost creepier than if I had seen the whole film, because then you imagine this whole world that may or may not be going on and what could be happening, and it's you're imagining that it's way worse than anything in the actual film sometimes. But that kind of stuff always drew me in, and including the Nightmare on Elm Street series. That was something I was really into in junior high. Me and a friend, we would just constantly rent Nightmare on Elm Street, Chucky, like that kind of stuff when we were younger, and rewatch them. And like vampire films, Fright Night, stuff like that. So the supernatural horror really was a draw for me, and I think that is one of the reasons why Manos was a draw for me, and that I felt like I could, continue on with the mythos of that story and contribute as a writer.
Some of your even your non-horror works, like Plain Devils, had a supernatural element to it because we had the fairy godmother. And so I thought that was fun that was also weaved in there. And I also have kind of traced like a juxtaposition between not only just comedic elements with your horror, but also there are, you like to, so you have a story about ghosts and they're wagering for souls, but we place this in a restaurant, like during a card game. And so I'm wondering like how you decide to mix and match what. I sense that there's an interest in kitsch and Americana and kind of taking those elements and putting them into other things, taking horror stories, supernatural stories, but placing them in a different context. What's sort of your process for deciding how to, or I know anybody's process, right? It just kind of comes to you.
Well, I mean, you're definitely right. I do have an interest in kitsch. I have an interest in American pop culture. It's just interesting to me. It's fascinating to me, things that resonate with people and things that were different in different eras. I work at an antique store. I'm also an antiques dealer, or with vintage as well, and that's 100% me. It's like I have this love of looking into the past and seeing how things were done and what things interested people and what kind of like things were trendy with people. It's just a fascination, I think, that I have, and that's where a lot of maybe my humor comes in, or maybe a little bit of like old-fashioned terminology or sensibilities in some of my stories. And I love old movies and old music as well. I mean, that comes with it. And then there's the horror side. So I feel like that's a really good sum up of what my work is. It's sort of that love of supernatural horror. I also have an interest in old fairy tales and folk tales, oral told stories, mixed with the sort of kitschy pop sensibility, I guess.
Yeah, I even it occurred to me that your surname of Atomic kind of brings to mind that sort of post-atomic age of films. You look at something like Matinee that kind of covered that era, the John Goodman movie, where I think even Popcorn to some extent covers that era. I mean, it's kind of the frame story being a killer on the loose, a cult killer on the loose in the theater, but that sort of post-atomic age that was expressed in comic books, that was expressed in B movies, and as we were talking about, as playing devils as sort of a while not in that monster movie, it was kind of adjacent, right? That era of the juvenile delinquent movie.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Um,
I was just gonna say I find nostalgia and the sense of nostalgia interesting, because I feel like as we are involved in whatever we're involved in, we're experiencing it and we see it a certain way, and then looking back with hindsight, that's when you go, oh, weird, I did that, or that's strange that people were doing that. But when you're immersed in it, it's not strange at all because of the circumstances of what you're in. So it's interesting to look back at things. It's interesting to look back at some things and see them as corny or cheesy when they were very much earnest in the time. And I find that fascinating, and I take these things both ways. I do have an earnest love and take it seriously, but I can also see the cornball aspect of it too and appreciate that as well.
right. Is that maybe why you were more of a Freddy fan than a Jason fan, because of his his current of humor?
Probably.
Although I will mention Friday the 13th Part 6 does have a weird undercurrent of humor as well. Some double entendre in some scenes, but also like little kid campers waiting it out to see if Jason's going to come, reading like No Exit and things like that. Just like these little visual gags. But tell me about antiquing and the antique store and how that has been for you. I know, so I'm in Arizona. I'm the town of Scottsdale has a bunch of great antique shops, but also just other areas in East Valley and Phoenix, and like there's so much good stuff here, and there's so there's Arizona's a very old population. There is a core of like younger folks and bohemians and filmmakers and artists and things like that, but they're still very it's not quite Palm Springs, but it's like there's some good stuff you can find because of that in the shops. So you're in Seattle.
Yeah. I'm in the Seattle Tacoma area. It's kind of strange here because we've had like a tech boom and like a population boom, and what used to be like Seattle and then the suburb areas, everything's super spread out now. To be like 20-30 mile radius, it's like kind of crazy. But the shop is not in Seattle proper, but it's in King County, and it's near Seattle. And the markets are different, they're definitely very different. We don't have the super old antiques like you get on the East Coast. And we do have like some of the, depression glass and uranium glass things that you'd find sort of in the Midwest. And, it's interesting. There's an interesting mix. Our mall is very big. It's about, I want to say, I know it's over 90 stalls, and we have over 90 dealers. And we have so many things, so many different kind of things. And I feel like I've learned a lot being in the store. I felt like I knew a little bit, but not much. But definitely because I also work shifts there, I have learned so much because I see all these different little gadgets come through, and especially all the little sort of mid-century like little kitchen gadgetry and things like that. And sometimes you look at things and you don't even know what they were used for. It's really interesting to see all of that stuff. And even, like the Victorian gadgetry, Victorian little things. And sometimes you see a thing, you don't know what it was, and then you find out, oh, that's a hat pin holder, but it's a certain shape, or whatever. You find there's so many little things, and all the little serving, like the Victorian era stuff, so many little serving dishes, serving trays, serving utensils. They were very particular with all the little pieces and everything. So it's really interesting to see, like, oh, that fork was made just for lettuce, or oh, that little scoopy thing is just for asparagus. Very particular things, which we would never think to have so many redundant utensils now. But it's just, to me, it's really fascinating because you get to see something from another era, and you get to, like, be tactile with it. You get to be right up close with it. And just every piece in the store has a history. Actually, I should share with you, I did a little movie / commercially thing for our store, starring James Grixani from Twin Peaks: The Return, and another friend, and Rachel Jackson, who worked on Manos Returns and was also in that. So I'll send you a link to that later, because it's really cute. And it's kind of fitting, because there's that whole thing about antique stores and antique items being creepy, especially the dolls. We have a lot of old dolls too, being creepy and haunted and that kind of thing.
First objects.
Yeah, so in a way, it's sort of melding, my worlds together even more. So
Absolutely. That's I was wondering about that, if there was anything that had maybe been inspiration for stories that even future ones we'd see on film, and anything you were convinced was a cursed object.
I haven't come across anything personally, although I have another dealer that had bought like a box, just a wooden box, and felt very eerie about that. I think he ended up getting rid of it. And I've heard stories from our old store, not really so much our new store, because we have moved locations. But I have heard a lot of stories about our old store, which I never witnessed anything myself, but nearly every other person on staff, I think every other person on staff had witnessed something. It's just that since I started a little bit later, I hadn't had the opportunity to witness anything.
Yeah. I do find that a lot of us, me, people in my local horror community, have that attraction to nostalgia, antique objects. We have a horror shop here called Terror Trader, where there's an oddities room, and you get to see a lot of different artifacts and things like that. And you did a segment of what is called Hobo With A Trashcan.
Mm-hmm.
And there, in that, the conceit is that the main character, the titular character, has a second sight. If he lays his hands on an object, then he sees that. And my understanding is that each of the director was given an object to then spring off and go shoot a movie around, right? So it was all, again, object based.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was so interesting how they did that. Christopher and Claire, who produced the film and came up with the original idea, and they did the wraparound segment. That was all their thing, and they came up with the idea that they would make the wraparound segment, and all the other directors would do their segments in their different cities that they lived. We all lived apart. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 people that lived sort of semi-close, but yeah, we were all in different areas. And what they did was they picked objects for their wraparound sequence, and they showed us what the objects were, and we had to use that object in our segment in a certain way, and then it would match the wraparound. So I thought that was really clever how they did that. And the Hobo Bo is his name. I forget what that's called. But when you touch something and you pick up things like in the Dead Zone, and
Right.
it's called something, but I can't remember. But you touch something and you could pick up senses from what the object, who had that object, or what something in the past or energy or something like that. But he had that, and he would touch the object, and basically he would be able to see the story of that object.
Right.
And that's the basis of the film. The other interesting thing is we were supposed to do it all sweat equity. They gave us $1 each to do our segment, and I was able to rent the room for $1 because I explained what the whole process was, what the whole project was. So I was able to rent the space for $1, and then I got everyone else to volunteer and found all the other items and made things, and that's how we got that done.
Excellent. And you do have a group of folks that you work with, including your husband, on various projects, right? That I've seen pop up in credits or on screen in repeated projects.
That's true. Yeah. I feel like I'm very, very lucky. When I first started working in film, there were people that I worked with that decided that it was too difficult or not for them. I mean, it is. I don't blame anyone for starting, hey, I'm going to be a filmmaker, or I'm going to, make commercials or whatever. I'm going to do these video film projects, and then realizing what kind of work it takes and then dropping out. I have nothing against anyone who does that, because it's very, very hard. It's hard to get anything done that to look any kind of good at all. I mean, that I'm not saying that properly, but to make a project and have it come across well and have it look good takes so much effort. It's very difficult. I mean, you are working long hours. Even in the indie world, you're working sometimes more. Sometimes you're working longer hours. You are putting a lot of work in it, especially in indie worlds. You're not getting compensated as much as you would in a, I don't know, different job. I mean, you just put in many hours, so much effort, and you're only getting paid, if you are getting paid,
Right.
Your hours on set or whatever. And it's a lot of work. And I at first, like I said, I was working with a lot of people, or a few people, because I'd taken film, I'd gone through a film program, 2-year film program. A lot of the people in that program dropped out. And a lot of the people that I thought I was going to end up working with just dropped out of the industry completely. But it's been it's something that is kind of an obsession of mine. Something that I feel like it's a need for me to be doing. I don't know what my life would look like without it. And so for me, it was not a question. Like, I was always going to keep going, even if I successful or not. I was going to keep going forever. So I'm lucky enough, though, to have met so many people, and some by chance, some very purposefully. Because you got to do a lot of networking. That's just very important. But some people by chance, like we met through a different job or through our day job, and we both happen to be working on film or in different ways, or my friend is an actor, and we met a different way, but then it kind of came together. And so I'm very lucky to know some of the people that I work with repeatedly, and those are the people I am friends with, I stay connected to. I purposefully decide, if I'm doing a project, these are the people I'm going to call, because I know I can count on them. A lot of times, if you are putting on an independent production, especially if you can't pay very much or at all, you're going to have people that think, oh, how that sounds really glamorous, and they don't actually want to do the work. So they don't show up, or they show up and they go home. And so if you have someone reliable, you got to hold on to them. And I'm lucky enough that I found people like that actually are people I want to be friends with and continue to work with them and have them in my life. So I've been very, very lucky. Like everyone on Manos Returns, Joe Sherlock, Rachel Jackson, Jackie Naaman Jones, they are all my dear, dear friends. The actor Stephen Shields, he was my friend who got cast independently. I passed his name on, but he got cast independently of me for Torgo. and he's a dear friend of mine. James Grixani, who I mentioned, love working with him. So many people that I love working with repeatedly, and like Jason Chamberlain, and my husband, you mentioned him. He does not enjoy working in film and video. He does not enjoy it. But a lot of times I rope him in because I need someone to help. So sometimes he will be gracious and help out. But and I thought he was really, really funny in Plain Devil, and
Yes,
I would love to have him be more part of it, but he doesn't enjoy it the way I do.
I totally understand and can relate to that. You have, I would imagine, some projects in the works. We kind of referred to the Bill Oberst Jr. project as one of them. What's your hopes, your plans for the immediate future?
Well, for that particular one, I'm still working on it. I have to get it to come together again. There's so many things that derailed that. I started work on it, and then my mother died, my father died, I had to move, the pandemic. I started that project going so many times and had so many huge life things derail it that I'm starting to think it's something weird. like something doesn't want me to make this movie. I don't know. Because I have started and stopped so many times. I I still want to go forward though. I still have plans for it. So um I guess if it stops 3 more times, then maybe I'll let it go.
Right.
I haven't yet. It's just been really crazy. Um I also have a anthology that's coming out. I'm not sure when because I'm still waiting on like one or two elements, but it's almost all finished. I'm really excited about it. Um, it's like a love/monster/horror anthology that I'm working on with. It's got Joe Sherlock, Ron Ford, Tim Ritter, um, Christopher Barnes, and me, and uh, another person that I think's happening in the works, but I'm not 100% sure. So, um, but anyway, that is shaping out. That's almost done. That one's almost finished. Um, I've got a couple other things that I'm working on with people, but we're on more beginning stages of that. I've got a script, a vampire script that I'm working on with a few people, and yeah. So I have things in the works. I have irons in the fire.
And you're always, I mean, you're still performing music. You perform in front of the camera. You have the YouTube channel and Instagram, which has content, TikTok as well.
I do a TikTok, yeah.
Yes, and I mean we see like unboxings and the readings from like the letters to the monkeys, and so you're always keeping busy with great stuff that we enjoy to watch. And that feels like to me part of that drive, like you said, it's just the compulsion, which I can also relate to as somebody who's in front of the camera, but writing. And I gave up music quite a while ago, but that's a whole nother episode. We could talk about that, but you feel that compulsion, like you said, to continue creating.
Definitely. When I was probably 4 or 5, I knew I wanted to be some kind of performer. And I even wrote it down, and I found it later. I don't know where it is now, but I wrote, when I grow up, I want to be an actress or a singer, and that's what I thought I wanted to do. And I've always loved, I started taking piano lessons when I was 4, and I had guitar lessons when I was in junior high and on, and I've always just loved that kind of thing. But my problem has always been I've been very, very shy. I was very painfully shy all growing up, to the point where I would be super, super quiet, and then if I finally got comfortable with someone, I would just be talking nonstop because because I finally had an opportunity to talk. I finally felt comfortable. Um, but that was me, you know, super quiet and then super talkative. And I had to overcome that, you know, as I got older, and just had to learn how to, I don't know, fake confidence, just do things, even if I felt uncomfortable, and talk to people, even if I felt uncomfortable. Um, and I just had to overcome that. But through my youth, aside from, you know, doing recitals in class or in a group setting, like choir setting type setting, I was always too shy to take the spotlight or be the performer. But that's always what I felt like I wanted. So it's interesting. I definitely have those feelings inside me still. Like I want to perform, I want to sing, I want to, I don't know. I just, it's not like I want the attention on me though. It's I want to perform and have no attention on me.
It's in service of the story and the work.
Yeah, you can't really do that without having eyes on you. So it's always been difficult with me to bridge that gap. And one way, you know, my way of figuring out how to cope with that is just shutting everything off and doing it anyway.
Right.
That's just how I've learned to cope with it. Like if I feel nervous, it's like, not even gonna think about it. Just do it anyway. And
I know that John Sayles is a hero of yours. What would you say you've taken as inspiration for your storytelling methods?
for me, one of the things that he does is he tells stories naturally. He lets stories unfold naturally. He's not heavy-handed with the dialogue, or I don't know. I think he just has a really good way of doing that, and I admire that. And I try to do that. I think I'm still, I don't know how else to describe this, but I feel like I'm a baby writer, a baby filmmaker. Like I'm very, I'm not like, I don't feel like I'm a seasoned professional in any way. Even though I've been doing these things for years and years, I feel like I'm not, I don't know, I just feel like everything's really new. I have so much to improve and so much to learn on. And I think part of that is because I am working in an independent um, situation where I don't often have someone who's very experienced to watch and learn from. I feel like I'm kind of learning by making my own mistakes, sort of thing. So I've never, I mean, even though like as of right now, Manos Returns is, I feel like it's my masterpiece project, right? But I don't, but I want to continue making things and continue feeling that way about something that's even better. For me, I feel like Manos Returns is so successful because we were able to kind of be a counterpart to the original, and the original was completely low budget. People call it the worst movie ever made, very clumsy. And I feel like if we were trying to make a counterpart to something considered like Citizen Kane or something like that, I don't think I have the chops to do that, or the budget kind of thing to do something like that right now. Although I would like to grow as a filmmaker, grow as a writer to get to something like that. I'm don't get me wrong, I'm very proud of Manos Returns, and I'm very I feel very validated because of the response that I get from people familiar with the original film. People that don't know what the heck it is and they just turn it on a lot of times are like, "What is this? It's terrible." No, you know, people that know, you know, people that know, they get it. Um, they love it. They think it's really appropriate and it's better than they expected it to be. And some people have said it's better than it has the right to be. And that, I feel like that makes me feel validated, like we were successful in doing what we were trying to do. And so to me, that is very successful, and that's something that I should be proud of. But I also want to do more projects that are more challenging, where I can become technically better. And also, I think, bring it back to the John Sayles, having the stories and the writing convey the meaning or the emotion that I'm trying to tell in a way that is impactful.
Wonderful. Tonjia Atomic, thank you so much for being the first guest on The Chamber.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely.